Hi there, everybody. I'm Cliff Murphy, Director of Folk and Traditional Arts here at the National Endowment for the Arts.
I'm Cheryl Sheely, Specialist for Folk and Traditional Arts.
Welcome to the How to Make a Nomination webinar for the 2019 NEA National Heritage Fellowships. Thanks so much for joining us. All participants, just so that you know, all participants on this call are muted, so you'll actually only be able to hear us. We'll take your questions through the Q&A box at the end of the presentation. And in the next week, you'll be able to view and listen to the archived webinar in the webinar section of the NEA's website. So for today's webinar, we will give a brief overview of the National Heritage Fellowships. We'll review the guidelines and nomination process. We'll provide some helpful hints and guidance on how to prepare a compelling nomination. And we'll close by opening up the lines for questions. So the National Heritage Fellowship Program was created in 1982 by advocate, educator, folklorist, producer Bess Lomax Hawes, who was the National Endowment for the Arts Folk Arts Program Director from 1977 to 1993. It's the nation's highest honor in the folk and traditional arts. 422 fellowships have been awarded to date. These fellowships recognize America's foremost vernacular artists and celebrate outstanding stewardship of living traditions. We award up to 9 fellowships each year. Nominations may be for an individual or for a group, such as a duo or an ensemble, but not for an incorporated organization. Now, of the 9 fellows each year, one of the fellows is named in honor of Bess Lomax Hawes, and that award goes to the nation's keepers of tradition. So the Bess Lomax Hawes Fellowship recognizes someone who's contributed to the excellence, vitality, and public appreciation of folk and traditional arts. The nominee must be worthy of national recognition and actively engaged in perpetuating folk and traditional arts, though they don't have to be a practitioner. We describe a Bess Lomax Hawes Fellow in 2 ways: an artist whose contributions, primarily through teaching, advocacy, organizing, and maintaining of important repertoires, have greatly benefited their artistic tradition, or an individual such as a producer or advocate whose efforts have significantly increased opportunities for and public visibility of traditional arts and artists. So in other words, 8 of the fellowships each year go towards practicing artists. 1 of the fellowships each year may go to an advocate or a practitioner. So you may nominate someone specifically for the Bess Lomax Hawes Fellowship, and all nominees will be considered for this award as well. Here are some examples of Bess Lomax Hawes Fellows from past years. Mike Seeger, folklorist and performing artist, in 2009. Judith McCullough, folklorist and editor, in 2010. Chris Strackwitz, record producer and founder of Arhoolie Records, in 2000. And Carolyn Mazlumi, quilting community advocate, in 2014. Selection criteria for all fellowships are artistic excellence, significance within the particular artistic tradition, and contributions to living cultural heritage. Our working definition of folk and traditional arts is those art forms rooted in and reflective of the cultural life of a community. Community members may share a common ethnic heritage, language, religion, occupation, geographic region, etc. Artistic traditions are shaped by values and standards of excellence that are passed from generation to generation. And those forms that are learned within family and community through demonstration, conversation, and practice. Here are some examples of folk and traditional artists who've received the fellowship over the years. B.B. King, the blues musician, in 1991. Sheila K. Adams, ballad singer, storyteller, and old-time musician, in 2013. The Quilters of Gee's Bend, in 2015. and Chitresh Das, a Kathak dancer and choreographer, in 2009. $25,000 is awarded for each fellowship and may be received once in a lifetime. The 2019 fellows will be announced in the summer of 2019. And in September of 2019, we'll bring the fellows to Washington, D.C. for an awards ceremony and banquet. And here's a picture of the 2016 fellows during the honorifics at the Library of Congress. There's also a celebratory concert here in Washington that follows the ceremony, and here are some images from the 2017 concert. So now I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl Sheely. Take it away, Cheryl.
Thank you. Making a nomination is a two-step process. The deadline and first part of the process is July 30th. To find the online form on our website, go to Lifetime Honors, where you'll select NEA National Heritage Fellowships. And on the fellowships page, you'll click Make a Nomination. Then you'll find the link to the online nomination form under Step 1. Before or on July 30th, you must complete and submit the nomination form on our website. This part must be done in one session. You cannot save and come back. The online form includes the nominee's name and information, a brief description of the nominee, which can be no more than 75 words, and describes the nominee's art form, number of years practicing, and contributions to folk and traditional arts. You may also indicate if this is a Best Lomax Hawes nomination. This brief description box is for the NEA staff only and will not be reviewed by the panel. It's used to help us log in the nomination quickly into other platforms. The second box is for panel review and is for the biographical information about the nominee. You may use this box, which allows for no more than 500 words, or you can upload an attachment to the next section. If you decide to upload a bio, please type "See attachment" in this box. The next section is where you upload a nomination letter, a list of support letters that will be added to the applicant portal, and the bio. This is all followed by the nominator's name, contact information, and finally, you can click Submit. Step 2 is the submission of the support letters and work samples in the NEA's applicant portal, starting August 2nd through the 6th. NEA staff will email you on the morning of August 2nd with a user ID and password for the applicant portal. You'll have until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on August 6th to upload, preview, and submit support letters and work samples. In the applicant portal, you may save and continue at a later time. You do not need to do it all in one session. That said, you cannot change the order within the system, so keep that in mind. We ask that you arrange the order of materials as support letters or statements of support, video samples, audio samples, images, and other samples such as articles or publications, etc. I won't spend a lot of time here going over the work sample format requirements. Please review the section called Work Sample Guidelines and Formats. You'll find a table that lays it all out for you. It looks like this. Now we'll review the key components and provide some guidance on a nomination. The nomination letter is where the nominator introduces the panel to his, her, or their nominee, the nominee's artistic contributions, cultural significance, and says why they believe this artist should be recognized. Some of our successful nomination letters skillfully weave the nominee's biographical information and accolades in with descriptive statements of cultural significance. A letter like this could be as long as 5 pages and may be providing information on a tradition that is not as well known. In this scenario, the bio is a little tighter and may be about 1 page. Other successful nomination letters are more condensed. They may have 1 or 2 pages, still providing all the pertinent information about the nominee. In this scenario, the bios are generally longer. The letters of support may provide greater detail and additional information on the subjects that are outlined in the nomination letter. You have up to 5 letters of support to submit. You're not required to have 5. It could be less, but not more. Support statements usually include letters from a folklorist and/or scholars on a particular subject, letters from the community, whether the community is artistic or geographic, depending on the artist, or letters from apprentices, students, colleagues, or contemporaries. Remember, you have 20 pages in total for the nomination letter and the support letters combined. This allows for some flexibility in the length of each item, and how you frame your nomination depends on what you choose to emphasize. Please stick to the work sample submission guidelines and do not submit more than what is required. It's important that the work samples are as strong as they can be. High quality and current images, audio, and video are important. And though video is particularly important for those nominations that have a dance element, it's also helpful for material culture nominees, storytellers, or musicians. It's a great way to provide context, whether family or community events on stage or possibly teaching. Archival video footage can be added to show the breadth of an artist's work. Video interviews, like news broadcasts, should be limited. If you decide to include interviews, focus on the artistic form, demonstration, and explanation. If you have the capability to edit videos into segments, it's a great way to show different aspects in 1 or 2 videos. So your nominations are active for 2 years, and you have an opportunity to update at any time. After 2 years, if the nomination has not been selected, you'll also have an opportunity to renew with updated information for another 2 years.
Thanks, Cheryl. So just to circle back to kind of the definition of folk and traditional arts that we give, just want to make sure that that people understand that this is an award that has been given over the years to a really broad range of cultural communities, different traditional types. So I would encourage anybody who's going to make a nomination to look at past recipients of the award, really spend some time in that section of our website, and get a sense of whether or not a tradition that you're thinking about making a nomination for, if it's been recognized in the past. You know, if you're presenting something new, and I want to make sure that that people listening here know that we do recognize new traditions with this award, that if you are nominating a tradition that hasn't been recognized before, just be aware that that really puts the burden on you as the nominator to really make that case, to present this as traditional arts, as American folk life. And you know, we'll get to this in a bit. You know, just to kind of give you a sense of how your nomination will function in the process. Nominations are reviewed by an advisory panel that we put together, folk and traditional arts experts, with at least one knowledgeable layperson on that panel. So imagine about 6 to 9 people reviewing a really broad multitude of nominations. You as the nominator aren't going to know who's in that room reviewing the materials. And so thinking kind of strategically about your nomination, your letters of support are really your best chance at placing somebody with expertise in the room to make the case for that person that you're nominating. So I would encourage you to kind of think of it in that context. So Let's open this up for questions.
Okay.
So just the first question that we have is, have the 2018 Heritage Fellowships been announced? And
they have not. We will be announcing the 2018 Heritage Fellowships in this month on the 20th. And all of those 2018 fellows have been notified of their fellowship, as well as the nominators. At this point, if your nominee has not been selected, it's a good time to get in contact with me and find out more information about how to either renew or update.
Okay, I just want to remind people that if you're on this call, just to be sure to type in and send us your question. We have a question, will it be possible to upload nomination work samples prior to August 2nd?
No, it will not be possible to do that prior to August 2nd. And we have, I guess, about 4 days there to do that. And if there needs to be something after that, please just give me a call.
One person wants to know if letters of support need an original signature, and we haven't required that in the past, though. I think that if you can provide, we have accepted email letters of support that clearly show that this has come from a real living person.
Right.
So whatever you can do to kind of provide that type of context for an electronic letter of support would be helpful. Somebody wants to know, would you discourage a nomination for a tradition that has already been recognized? No, we would not discourage that type of nomination. We, in fact, encourage all nominations. And I think that, sometimes with a tradition, let's say like blues, this was not the caller's question, wasn't about blues, but using that as an example of a tradition that has had a number of fellows in the past, sometimes instead of trying to explain how this genre fits within folk and traditional arts, the burden then falls on you to kind of place that person within the context of a large, well-known traditional art form. How many nominations are under consideration each year?
We have a little over 100, 120 that are reviewed each year. It fluctuates.
Somebody asked if the definition of folk and traditional arts that we read is posted online anywhere, and yes, it is. It is on
the Heritage Fellowships page or the Folk and Traditional Arts page.
So somebody wants to know a bit more about letters of support. What's the difference between a letter from a colleague or a contemporary? That sounds similar. So I'll give you my sense of based on what we see here in terms of the most successful nominations tend to come from a number of different points of perspective. So oftentimes there is a letter in there from somebody who is considered an expert on whatever the genre is or the cultural practice is that's being nominated, who speaks from a somewhat objective perspective and can provide that bigger framework for the tradition. Oftentimes there's a letter of support from someone within the community that is saying that, yes, this person represents, I don't know, the best of us, or this person is somebody who is well understood, well known, well supported by this cultural community. There might be a letter from, so you asked about colleague or contemporary. So again, it really depends on who's being nominated. So in a tradition as widespread as, let's say, mariachi music, there might be a contemporary that doesn't actually personally know the person who's being nominated, but is very familiar with their musical output, for instance, whereas a colleague is somebody who has performed with them or learned from them or been a student of theirs or been a mentor of theirs. Somebody asked about submitting links to video work samples.
Yes, and to do that, you can essentially create a PDF with your 3 or 1 video work samples that you can link to.
We have a question about how do I update a nomination, or when can I update a nomination and how?
So at this point, you can update a nomination at any time, but it's in the summer and fall that is the best time to update your nomination. And to do that, you need to reach out to myself, and my contact information is there, to find out what your login information, if you don't have it, is, and we can open it up for you to make updates.
Okay, we have a question. Someone wants to know if they can submit more than 1 nomination per year.
Yes, you can submit more than 1 nomination a year. You just have to do it separately when you're doing your online form. So you have 2 different nomination forms that you're filling out.
Okay, we have a question. What advice would you give? Could you give about a person who was nominated years ago and whose nomination is continually renewed but has yet to be nominated, but has yet to be selected, I think is what's meant. Is there a point when you would suggest to the nominator to stop reapplying, or renewing that nomination? I don't know that we're really in the business of discouraging nomination. I can say from observation that that there are some nominations that have been in the pool for a very long time that eventually come to positive fruition.
Yes.
Others never quite rise to that point. Sometimes there are traditions that when the person is nominated are so new that a panel is still trying to assess what its impact is on, in terms of national recognition, and that over time that nomination will rise to the surface. I would also just encourage anyone who's made a nomination to reach out to us for feedback, so that we can share with you just some observations from the review process that might go to strengthen the nomination. All right, can you say a bit more about a letter from a community member, artistic or geographic? Okay. Cheryl, do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yes. When I think about artistic community member, I would go into something like mariachi or the blues. If they're practicing, perhaps not in Tennessee or no longer in Mississippi. Let's think about B.B. King for a moment, where they live somewhere else. So their artistic community members really the genre. And then geographic is for those who are deeply rooted in a particular area of a community, in a state or in a region. I think the example you saw we gave of Sheila K. Adams is a good example of where there's a geographic significance to the work that she does.
And I would add to that, there are certainly some traditions that are not particularly very widespread, right? And so as an example, you may have a pottery tradition from a specific indigenous community that may be small, and in that case, the letters from community members are of really profound importance in this nomination process. So it really depends on what's being nominated, and if you're I don't know, if it's a diasporic tradition, we had Kathak dance in the presentation earlier, or Irish traditional music. If you have something that's kind of that's a global tradition, right, there's that question of what is the community. I think that if you can show a letter of support from a local community and from kind of the global diasporic community, or from the national community of practice, being able to have both of those things in the nomination is going to serve you very well. Okay. How do you, can we say a bit more about a letter? Oh, no, I'm sorry. How do we establish the authority of the experts providing the letters of support, particularly if it's a previously unrecognized art form? In other words, how do you make the case to the reviewers that person X is a leader and expert in art form Y? That is a great question. That is something that I would actually encourage you to reach out to us and talk to us directly about the specifics of the nominee, and we can talk with you about how you might, how you might do that. I mean, there are. I think that anytime that you are getting a letter of support from somebody that might not be known to a very general review panel, having some credentials that are explained in that letter is going to be helpful. And when I say credentials, I don't just mean people with a PhD or a master's or some kind of terminal degree or scholarly degree. It's also people who may be very well known and respected leaders within their community. So Carolyn Meslumi, the Bessel Max Haas Fellow who was cited earlier, is somebody who has credentials within the quilting community. And so a letter from her should probably come with a 2-sentence bio or explanation of what her expertise is and what her authority to speak on behalf of a tradition or a community is. I hope that's helpful. But again, reach out to us directly if you have concerns about that. Somebody else, just following up about this long-standing nomination question, they want to know if there's any feedback from the panel, if we provide feedback from the panel as to what might have deterred someone from receiving an award, and we can provide that.
Yes, we can generally provide feedback on how a nomination was reviewed, and if not that, even just a conversation with us about what's been provided as support letters is a good way to sort of get your feedback.
Let's see. People often ask us if they can nominate themselves for this award, and just for the record, they can't. Does an individual have to be living to be nominated? And the answer to that is yes, they also have to be living in order to receive the award. And what do I do if I want to nominate someone, but I'm not sure if the individual has been nominated already?
You can reach out to me, and I'll take a look at our database to see. It's a good way to find out first if somebody's been nominated before, or even if it's a lapsed nomination, and you could probably add to something.
We have another question about the Beth Lomax Hawes Award. Somebody wants to know whether who decides whether the nomination is competitive for a Beth Lomax Hawes Award versus a Heritage Award. So there are times that that the panel that's reviewing nominations will say that, they feel a particular nominee, maybe whose nomination hasn't indicated Best Lemhi cause in the nomination form, that the panel will make a call and they'll feel that this is somebody who is deserving of this additional form of recognition. So it's something that happens organically in the review process. Okay. Looks like we've come to the end of our questions. Oh, we have one more. Do heritage panels take place in person or remotely? Our panels take place remotely. The NEA staff, of course, is all in person together, but sadly, we convene these. This year, we started doing these by video panel, so the panelists can see one another, but we're not all together in the same room. And the panel process takes several days. One of the upsides of the remote panels is that it has made it easier for us to incorporate people who are extraordinarily busy or live prohibitively far from Washington, D.C. to take part in the process. While it is ideal if we all could be together, there are some benefits to the remote panel. Another question is if we've submitted a written nomination in the last 2 years, do we have to resubmit electronically?
Yes, if you've submitted something that was in writing or in email in the last 2 years, then definitely you have to submit it electronically. We started doing electronic nominations a while ago, so I would have to have it in our system to do it. So I would suggest either reaching out to me to see if there's a way that it could be, it's already maybe in our database system and in our system, and we can just open it up. So I would encourage you to reach out to me.
All right. We do have one additional community question that a listener has sent in, which is, I think, too specific maybe for this general webinar. So we'll follow up with you via email after this call is over. Yeah. We hope that this has been a useful and helpful process to you all. We appreciate you taking part, and this is really our first National Heritage Fellowships webinar. And if you have additional questions after this is over, please don't hesitate to reach out to us directly with via email or by phone. Thank you. As ridiculous as this may sound, thank you for caring. Without you, without nominations, there are no National Heritage Fellowships. So this is an important part of this process. We appreciate your participation in it, and we look forward to your nominations.